Welcome to the KNEO Community Connection, a podcast here brought to you by the Sky High Podcast Network. On this podcast, we keep our finger on the pulse of what is going on in the 4 states, telling you about upcoming events you don't want to miss, organizations in our area doing great work, and conversations with the dynamic citizens who are making it all happen. And at the risk of sounding a little self-serving today, the organization we want to tell you about is KNEO Radio. And the conversation that we want to make happen today is with me, Luke Taylor. I'm your host on this program. But I want to talk to you about a project that KNEO has been working on. And to do that, I brought in a couple of my coworkers here at the radio station, Daniel Moore and John Ball. And they are also involved in the creation of a very exciting documentary that we're going to be releasing this week. And so, hey, Daniel and John, thanks for joining me today to talk about this program.
Thanks for having us here,
You
Luke.
bet. Thanks for having us. But further, Luke, thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this project.
Yes, John was our narrator on the documentary that's going to be releasing on Friday. And so, John, I appreciate the talents that you lent to this thing. I'll tell people what it's all about. Strong Tower, a KNEO documentary, is a documentary film that we've put together talking about the creation of a new tower that we put up in 2023. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to be familiar with the fact that we had to put up a new tower. If you're a local person, and I hope you are, because this is a podcast that's geared toward people in the KNEO broadcast area. So if you're listening, that this podcast is for you. And so we know you've probably been aware of this construction project. You've probably driven by it several times and maybe watched the tower go up a bit from a distance. But I'd say most people don't know the full story. And so we're going to share all that with you in Strong Tower, a KNEO documentary. It's going to premiere on Facebook and YouTube. And that's going to come out on Friday, January 27th. 2024. It's also going to be available on our website, kneo.org. And so, Daniel, I'll let you kind of take it away, but tell people if they go to the website how they could find it.
Yeah, Luke, the reason we've put it on the website as well, I just want to kind of explain that so you can kind of keep this in the back of your mind also. When we put things on Facebook, as it goes, Facebook stories travel off into out into nowhere. Eventually they disappear. So
right.
When we put the entire documentary on Facebook, it's going to be there for a while and be visible, but then it's going to be gone. And this is something that is a historical marker in the history of KNEO. And so we want to make sure that this documentary is always accessible, and it will always be accessible on YouTube. But we know that most people identify us through our website. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is on our website, you can go to kneo.org. And once you get to that website, there's at the beginning here for a while, we're going to leave up a feature about 3/4 of the way down on the homepage. There'll be a feature item there for the documentary. You can click that. It'll take you right to the documentary webpage. In the future, that will probably switch to being something else. So you will, after that, we'll find it under the About section on our website. So if you look at the navigation bar at kneo.org, one of those options is About. You mouse over that, and you'll see Strong Tower drop down below. You'll click that. That video will always be available to watch there on our website at kneo.org. So, of course, if you have any questions about how to see that, please feel free to contact us here at the station, and we'll give contact information here towards the end of this episode. But as we was putting this together, and just from my side of things, I've worked at the station twice now. I worked here back in the 80s when KNEO first started. And when I came back in 2018 for a second time, I will say one thing that I always thought about after I started working here is what would ever happen if we had to replace that tower? Because when that tower was purchased for KNEO here, it was used to begin with. It wasn't a brand new tower. I was not here when that happened, but that tower had a lot of years on it. And I knew the dynamics of trying to take that tower down and put it back up, all the cabling that was involved. I always wondered what that would be like. I never knew I was going to experience what it was going to be like so quickly, because here within just a few years, we've had to go ahead and replace that tower. But KNEO has been a staple in this area for over 30 years. And anybody in this local area pretty much should either know who we are or know about us. Maybe you're a regular listener. And we've, as years went along, tried to become more and more community-oriented, local community-oriented. And one thing about John Ball, he is, as Luke stated earlier, this documentary is narrated by John Ball. John was also a former Neosho mayor, and I don't know if a lot of you out there listening might remember that and know that he was a part of our political scene here for a few years. So not only is John a employee here at KNEO, but he's also has the community aspect as well. So I think that it was just fitting that with John being an employee here and then having this experience with being the mayor of Neosho also kind of puts this project into a position where it really is a community project. And, John, share with us what that means to you about, this whole project being a part of our community. You've been in Neosho for most of your life, so.
Yeah, I really have. I came here 5 years ago, and it was just a perfect fit because I get to share about the two things that I love the most. One of them is Neosho, and the other is my faith. And I get that opportunity here at the radio station. But it really was a privilege for me because I'd been in the radio business back many years ago. And to be back again, I used to tell people the technology is so great now, we can even make me sound good. So to be a part of this and to realize what God's faith was all about, and truly is a story of God's faith. He had a plan, and He chose us to be able to put together His plan and make it work. And KNEO, not only KNEO, but Northwest Arkansas, Southwest Missouri, Kansas, we are all part of that. And because of the new tower that we had built, the signal is a lot crisper and it's a lot greater, and that was God's plan to begin with.
Yeah. And of course, once we started this project was meant to be a deconstruction of a tower and construction of a new tower. But as it goes in ministry, sometimes Satan has things that he likes to do to try to get in the middle of our projects and try to cause issues and cause problems. And something that will be included in this documentary is some things that a lot of the public don't know about. And one of the things that is included is, some of you listening probably know, some of you may not, Mark Taylor, our general manager here, ended up having some heart issues during this time of us putting this all together. And he ended up having to have bypass surgery right in the middle of this project, the biggest project that KNEO's ever taken on. And Satan he started coming right after us and trying to figure out ways that he could halt this and stop it. Of course, the rest of us were here. We could keep things going on, but, with Mark being the general manager and our pivot man here at the station for all of this, it made it kind of difficult for us to make this happen. But God worked through all of that as well.
Well, He did, and He showed His sovereignty by saying, number one, we're going to build this tower because that's my plan, but number two, I'm going to take care of Mark at the same time. So while we were in the process of putting the tower together, Mark was in St. Louis going through open heart surgery, and God took care of all that.
Yeah, and then, of course, there at the end of the construction of the tower, we had issues with our lighting. Satan tried to attack us again at the very end of the project. We got the tower completely constructed. Everything was ready to go. We flipped the switch and we found out that our tower lights wouldn't stay on. And unfortunately, not only did we have that issue, but it ended up costing us several tens of thousands more dollars to get that issue corrected, which was not expected. And so the budget started out at a certain number. By the time it was done, the budget inflated to an astronomical number. And it was starting to get to a point where, as a small radio station in this community, you start kind of questioning, where's this money going to come from? In this ministry, we live on faith. God supplies our needs daily here at the station. We are, function completely around spreading the gospel, and God's using this station for that purpose. So we always leave our financial details and that kind of thing in God's hands. But as human beings, we sometimes have a tendency to get a little worried and concerned.
But Daniel, even in the midst of that, even the thing like the tower, we had a tower before and we had a cross on the tower. Not many people knew about that. They didn't see it very often because sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. The fact that that tower had a cross that was illuminated and there was not any lights on the tower, I had more and more people say, man, that cross tells a story. They could see it almost from First Baptist Church to Love's. All they had to do was look up in the sky. They could see it from Interstate 49. They could see it on 86 Highway coming from Seneca. And they realized with all the other lights off, that cross told exactly what we stand for, and it tells a story in itself.
It does. And we've had people even that's driven by on the interstate out here by KNEO that's looked in the distance and saw the glow, and they couldn't really figure out what it was. And they finally got a chance to come down 86 Highway, and then they saw that it was a cross when they got here, and they've actually written us little notes and sent them in the mail, thanking us for putting those crosses up there. And I do think that anytime that you start coming up on KNEO and 86 Highway at night and you see those crosses glowing, we have one pointing towards the east and one pointing towards the west. And when they see that cross glowing, it kind of gives you goosebumps a little bit when you see that glowing up there, knowing what God is doing right here on this property and spreading the gospel of Jesus here through our radio station.
I think one of my very favorite scenes is the time-lapse scene where we show how the cross was put together. Now, it was not built in a day, but through that time-lapse, which is 30, 45 seconds, I guess, Luke, it shows just exactly how hard the guys worked, and they knew exactly what the process was. They were a group of professionals in themselves.
Yeah, and we'll get to see the construction of the tower. The video, when it finally releases, you're going to be able to get a first-person view from the very beginning of the project all the way to the very end of it when everything was in full, completely running and up and running, and we had a full signal going. You're going to see this from the very beginning and to the end. And if you've never seen a tower constructed, it's been quite an interesting thing to watch over this last year for all of us being here, just seeing the different obstacles that they had to overcome and then seeing how they did it. There is definitely an art in going to putting those tires together. So I think myself, the viewer, is going to really enjoy it. Yeah,
this is one of the reasons we wanted to do a documentary about this, is because this is watching a tower go up. This is one of those things that most people are never going to see up close and personal. And as I was watching it happen, I thought, well, all my life, you turn on your radio, your receiver's getting that FM signal, and you're not really thinking about all that went into the process of getting that signal out there into the airwaves and getting it to your radio. And so all my life I've driven by radio towers, never thought about what it took to put one of those things up. And I'd say most of our listeners probably haven't either. It's just one of those things that's just always there. And so this documentary it gives you that little slice of life. It gives you those details of what goes into the creation of a radio tower, all the pieces that have to be put into place. And, you think, oh, they just do it with a crane. Well, come to find out, you can't do everything with a crane. And when you want to just bring a crane in, you can't just set a crane anywhere you want to. There's a lot of preparation that went into preparing the grounds and getting all that ready to even be able to bring in a crane. But a crane couldn't do all of it. And so as people watch this documentary, I think it'll just kind of open their eyes to things, and they'll find it interesting to see all these details that go into the creation of a radio tower. And next time they're driving by one, they won't see it the same way that they did before.
Yeah. And when you was talking about the extra work, one of the things that had to take place out there was we literally had to have dump trucks come in, and they had to dig out a big square area and dump red clay in that area so that the crane, when it came in, could sit on it without sinking.
Right.
It's all those little bitty details you don't think about when you're starting to do a project like this that's so interesting when you finally get to see it all come to fruition and all come together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what it really is, it's a story of how God orchestrated this whole process to include the weather, to make sure we had the right weather when we needed it, how we needed it, to include the lights not going on so people could actually see the cross, to include the very top and the view that some of the guys from the very top showed us, to include the matter of prayer and how vitally important prayer was in order to begin any kind of a project like this.
Yeah, just one more minor detail, too, about the cross. That's something that most people don't know either. After we got the crosses hung up and they were actually working, we had a storm come through within days of getting those crosses up there, and lightning struck and knocked one of them out. Mm-hmm. And we had to have the climbers come out, climb the tower, and pull the cross back down, relight it, and put it all back up again. Satan has tried his hardest to keep this tower from being erected, but to the glory of God, it's standing out there now with the crosses fully lit, and we're just so thankful for what God's done.
This might be a good spot to, we'll play a scene here from the documentary. And of course, this is an audio podcast, so you won't be able to see it for yourself until it releases on Friday. But let's play a scene here that is from the documentary itself, and it's just talking about why we have crosses on our tower.
With the lighting situation worked out, there was one more piece of the puzzle to fit in. Something Mark wanted to be sure that the Wallace Tower crew installed before they officially left the job site. 2 LED crosses facing the east and the west about 300 feet up on KNEO's tower.
Well, I think it's important to have the cross up there to remind people of who we are, what we are, and why we do what we do here. And I just like that presence to be up there. It's a statement. When you come up and down the road or even look from another road going another direction, you can see that, and it's a statement of what we're all about.
KNEO's former tower also had a cross, but on this new tower, God's cross would shine brighter and farther than ever.
LED lighting's made a big advancement in how things work, and we were able to build a little better cross and put a lot more lights on it.
You know, it's almost a shame that the lights had to start working, because when you drive by the station at night, all you would see is the black night sky with the cross shining on it. And you know, there's that old song that says the cross says it all. And for us, for believers in Christ, the cross really does say it all. And it's all we need to know. It's a symbol of God's love for us, and that's what the ministry represents.
Truly, the cross does say it all. KNEO's management never viewed the station as belonging to any one person, board, or city. This is God's radio station, and this tower is God's strong tower.
I believe God ordained this to happen, even though I don't understand why, you know. If we see things going on in our world, we wonder, well, why would we have to get into some kind of a project like this all of a sudden? But God has a plan, and God always wants to make a statement. And I think this is one of his statements that he's made, and he's going to even do more with the statement that he's made with the tower.
So if you want to watch this documentary, the best way to do this is to get on our Facebook page, and that's going to be facebook.com/@KNEO Radio, and it will be released there. Also, our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is also youtube.com/KNEO Radio. And then, of course, probably the best, easiest way to find it, especially for the future, will be at KNEO Radio at kneo.org is where you will go to watch it in the future. And that will be releasing this Friday. It'll be released live so that you can watch that. So you make sure you go and check that out. And hopefully you'll enjoy watching our tower be put up as we continue on into the future with spreading God's word.
Yeah, I do hope people will check it out. Again, it's called Strong Tower, a KNEO documentary. I think it'll be a joy for people to watch. John Ball, as we said, was our narrator on the project. He did a great job, and it tells the whole story there of what it took to put this tower up. I don't think anyone who watches it, you'll never drive by the station again and see that tower or see those crosses in the sky without thinking about some of the things you saw in this documentary. And so we do encourage you to check it out. We're very excited to share all this information with you. And we thank you for listening today to the KNEO Community Connection podcast. This has been Luke Taylor. I've been speaking today with Daniel Moore and John Ball here at the station. So thank you for tuning in on this podcast episode today. And John and Daniel, thanks for being with me.
You bet.
Thanks for having us.
Last year, something happened that changed KNEO forever. To stay on the air, we found out that we needed to replace our 340-foot radio tower.
So my question back was, God, what are you doing?
Relive every step of the process with us, from the planning to fundraising to groundbreaking and to unforeseen challenges in construction.
I've found through the years, if something's going to happen that has never happened before, it'll happen at KNEO, and it did.
From laying the foundation in prayer to Reaching Sky High, this documentary will show you everything it took to build KNEO's new tower.
This was more than just a piece of equipment for us. This was the tool that God was going to use to spread His word all throughout the area.
Strong Tower, a KNEO documentary, releasing January 26, 2024.